ladies and gentlemen, Wuthering Waves has finally announced some of the final details when it comes to the version 2.7 update. And while there are some things that are going to be a complete rehash of what we've already seen on the live stream and some prior announcements, there's some new stuff in store. And a bit of a spoiler warning, it's already led to some initial, I don't know really what else to call this other than some maybe like cautionary doom posting, cautionary like warnings, because, well, it looks like there's a new premium package in the store. So we'll get to that when we get to that. But what I wanted to do was actually take a look overall at what some of the numbers are looking like in this update to see, you know, how the story is actually unfolding. Because they've got things like Asterite count, some of the rewards, so on and so forth, and we can actually see what's going on over here. So just starting off, you're going to recognize both of these screens. We're going to have the two new main quests as well as the main quest after story. One thing that's a little bit suspicious about this is the fact that they haven't released any of the Asterite counts for any of these quests, which is something a little bit odd, and I feel like Kuro may or may not have done it before, but it would be helpful to actually know how many Asterites are coming from the main quest, you know, kind of like an indication of the overall rewards of the patch. But that stuff's getting hidden. We're also going to have the new echoes over here, which are naturally going to be for the new Sonata set for Galbraina, and, well, the tactical hologram, right? Maybe main quests just have a pretty traditional, like, Asterite count. You already know how much there's always going to be. Same with the holograms, and so that's why they're not showing it. However, as we start moving on and we start taking a look at the other events, well, we've got Lament Recon, Solaris Soldier, the Vampire Survivors, quote-unquote, combat event. That's, once again, it's not a combat event. It's just a minigame. Well, they're going to be showing you all the actual rewards for this one. And I have a bit of a minor, not really a minor, I have a bit of a major complaint about this. If you're a dedicated player to Wuthering Waves, if you're trying to min-max, sweat, you know, get the most progression possible on your account, these are all exactly the rewards that you want. Modifiers and tuners. Modifiers and tuners are essentially the main kind of like piece of upgrade materials for somebody that's trying to min-max as much as possible in the game. And the fact that this minigame that features none of the combat in the actual game, doesn't even use your tuners, doesn't even use your modifiers, is one of the most heavy sources of rewards for endgame materials, is just, I feel like it's just gonna leave a bitter taste in people's mouths as time goes on. Hey, to progress in Wuthering Waves, to get better at the combat, to get better gear and all of this, yeah, the best way to do that is to play a bunch of fucking minigames. Tuners, modifiers, echo experience, right? Any progression materials. If that was in a combat event, I'd understand that. I'd actually love that, to be honest, because it would make a lot more sense. But when you're at the point where the best source of progression that you have for, again, your characters and your gear is to go play a minigame that doesn't use any of those, I'm just gonna be honest. What are we doing here? This now is getting to the point where if you're like a super dedicated player to the game, you're starting to feel very forced into, to keep the level of progression that you've had in other patches, fully immerse yourself into all of these goddamn minigames. And that's, I mean, if that's the vibe that you want, that's the vibe that you want, right? But I don't want to see this again next patch. That's my take. All right, but I would just say as a whole, this is clearly the main event of the patch. That's why they're showing the Asterite. It's a respectable amount of Asterite, right? 800, but that's just another thing that's going in the line of, well, you're forced to play this entire thing. You have to do it. Last thing that I wanted to do while we're on the topic of Lament Recon Solaris Soldier, some people, they might see the combat event and the combat event label, and they'll be saying, oh, Saint, look at you spreading misinformation. 2.7 actually has combat events. Look at you, you silly goose. We're gonna cook you again. And, well, I don't know what type of Wuthering Waves you've been playing, but, yeah, when I go into the TOA or I go into a domain, it doesn't look like this. So, once again, this is being labeled as a combat event, and it is literally a minigame. So, I just wanted to make that abundantly clear. Yeah, my holograms don't look like this. My TOA doesn't look like... Maybe yours does, but maybe you also take a look at the taskbar and you realize, wait, I actually don't have Wuthering Waves open. It wasn't the TOA, it was Vampire Survivors. So that might be the explanation on your end. So, but once again, it's labeled as a combat event. It's not a fucking combat event. Or it might be a combat event, but it's the combat of another fucking game, not Wuthering Waves. All right, now we got the login event. So yeah, just the classic 5 limited, 5 standard pulls over here. Nothing too crazy to talk about here. And now we got the second login event. A whopping 300 Asterite, so about 2 pulls. Modifiers, tuners, seal tube, shell credits, like all the rewards over here, very achievable, very accessible for people. Now, we're going to have the Septimont weather forecast, the parkour event, and that's going to get 400 Asterite and then a bunch of mats over here. You're kind of seeing, right? It doesn't seem like there's a lot of... I'm not seeing some particularly high Asterite counts this patch. It is what it is. Next, we're going to have the photo event, and that one's just going to be another 400 Asterite, followed by some upgrade materials, some gold ones for EXP, and then purple ones for skill mats. Okay, cool. And then Lolo campaign, which is going to be another 400. So this is about 400, 800, 1200, 1200, 1500. So it's about almost a 10 pull. We're just shy. So I would say about 9. I'll count it as 10. That's a 10 pull. That's 15. And then we have another 800 Asterite over here. So that's going to be like, what, 5 pulls? It's at about 20 pulls so far from the events. Yeah, I think I see about 20 pulls from the events over here. Yeah, 20 pulls from the events in the patch. So, yeah, anyone saying that they definitely could have had room for a combat in here, you know, a nice 400 Asterite combat event, right? I feel like we definitely had room in the budget for a 400 pull combat event. If right now all I'm seeing is 20. It's actually less than 20, by the way, because we rounded up 1500 to 1600. Do recall that we rounded up the 1500 Asterite to 1600. So yeah, it's about 20 over here. Then we're gonna have the limited time drop events. Very neat. I mean, you can't really complain about these. And that's it. that's it for the numbers. Now we're getting into the banners. So I've already naturally said everything that I could about the events of the patch, but as you can clearly see, every single bit of material that you're seeing about like the actual like scheduling and the events and all the stuff that's in this update, it's this is one of the shortest ones ever. And yeah, we just saw 20 pulls. Less than 20 pulls at that point. So it is what it is. Now, let's go ahead. We've already looked at the banners. We've already done our analysis. No real reason to look at these further. We already know what the 4 stars are. Let's start talking about some of the new things that are going to be in here. I'm going to be real. Has Kuro Games ever done this before? Has Kuro Games ever put the Pioneer podcast, which has been in the game since version 1.0, have they ever put the Pioneer podcast in like their version details announcement? This, you know what? Let's get the link. Let's actually, what I want to do right now is let's get the link. Let's see what 2.6's looked like. Because you know what would be kind of goofy? It would be pretty damn goofy if 2.6's didn't have that. And the natural implication is that it felt like they had to put in something because there was actually nothing in the fucking update. Let me just check over here. Yeah, no, this looks like a similar one to the last time. Let's go ahead. Let's see if the Pioneer podcast is in here. Just to make sure. I don't want to be too presumptuous. Okay. All right, it is. Okay. Just making sure. Just wanted to double check. It is in there in version 2.6. Okay, so this is a pretty consistent thing that they do. I had the thought in my mind that it was getting added in because there was no actual content in the update. But once again, this is something that they typically always do. All right, now let's get on into the situation that's resulting in quite a bit of a discussion across the community. And let's do a bit of a breakdown for what's actually going on over here. So, Wuthering Waves always has some bundles in the store. These bundles are typically always considered, right? Some of the more affordable things in the game, you know, naturally you're still paying some cash, but you get a discount, right? It's close to value in terms of like the top-up bonus every single patch, right? There are multiple packages. There's one that refreshes every month, as well as special version packages, right? That are meant to be a way better deal. Right. However, Kuro Games has gone above and beyond in the 2.7 update, and apparently they've come out with something entirely new. The Champions Battle Song Collection Bundle. one purchase available in the current version for the price of 20 USD. We got 600 Asterite, 20 weekly challenge supply packs, and 500,000 shell credits. So there's typically going to be, I think, two sides of the equation when it comes to the discussion over here. Some people are calling this pay to win, right? Some people are calling this predatory, right? Some people are calling this to, you know, like monetization that isn't relatively healthy for the game. And my point of view on this is pretty simple, right? This is 2 weeks worth of weeklies, a little bit more than that, as well as some Asterite on top of it. That's not really that much. I'm just going to be entirely honest with you. It's 2 weeks of mats. I see some people in my chat saying it was 7 weeks of mats. Guys, that can't be the case because, once again, it gives you one of these, and you get 3 tries a week, and all 3 give you 3. So that's what it is. 1 run is equal to 3 mats. You get 3 a week, so that's 9 a week. And so this is perhaps one of the furthest actual things from pay to win I've ever seen. If anything, this is a straight up fucking scam. This is a scam. This is a scam. Like, this is one of the most expensive things I've ever seen in the store because you can buy 4 monthly passes for the price of this, ladies and gentlemen. This is the same price as 4 monthly passes. This is the same price as actually 10 pulls at 800 Asterite. And so most of the value of this package, again, it's 1200 Asterite for the monthly pass. 4 monthly passes is 1200 Lunite plus the 4 months of the daily login of 90. So clearly this is dog shit value. And all this is, ladies and gentlemen, is an opportunity for new whales to the game to catch up on weeklies and build their characters. That's it. That is all that this is addressing when it comes to the audience in Wuthering Waves. It is made for new whales and only new whales. Because you want to know what it looks like from a day one perspective for how many weekly boss mats you actually have. I have basically 90, 80, 70% of my characters built in the way that I want. I've just started doing random weekly bosses. I've got 35 of these just sitting here because, like, I was, like, trying to decide on which ones to farm. I think I can actually see from the menu how many I have as a day one. It won't tell me over here. But the thing is that if you're somebody that, you know, has been logging in repeatedly, right, every single week to do your weeklies, you have such an insane number of these weekly boss mats, you don't actually need to ever be in a situation where you buy any of them. This is, again, the addressable part of the player base when it comes to this package is extremely, incredibly, absurdly small. You fall into basically 2 buckets. You're a new whale that's trying to catch up on a bunch of different things, or you're somebody that wants to have 20 weekly boss mats on, I think, day 1. Right? 20 weekly boss mats on day 1 so that you might be able to, like, max out the new character immediately. I might buy this, right? So that I can have some extra mats for my Galbrena. But I also recognize that I'm going to be able to get 9 of them. Immediately once the patch drops, I'm going to be able to get 9 of them and then probably level up my Galbrena to the degree that I need her to be, right? Level 8 in the skills and stuff like that. I'll be fine until the next week. Who knows? I might just buy it though so I don't spoil myself on the weekly boss and I could just buy the materials as well, right? I might just do it from that perspective too because I'm in a position, thankfully, where $20 is not a big deal for me. You could consider me a whale because of that statement. But like I said before, this is one of the worst packages in the game in terms of value. And all you're saving here is time. You're not getting some other constrained resource that's absolutely insane. You're getting dog shit value in pulls. All this is a literal 2 weeks worth of time savings. And then everything else is essentially a gigantic fucking scam, right? And this is the thing. It's a time savings to make your character deal about 5%, 5 to 10% more damage. That's the time savings. It's you going from, like, level 8 out of 10 on your abilities to 10 out of 10. And guess what? You're still gonna have to wait for all the skill mats. You're still gonna have to wait for all the grinding when it comes to actually spending these weekly boss mats. Because what do you have to do to actually spend your weekly boss mats? Well, you're going to have to go ahead and, well, you already see a bunch of 10 out of 10s, right? You're going to actually have to go ahead and, well, farm all of these bad boys too. And believe me when I say this, it's going to take you quite a while, assuming, right, that you have all these weekly boss mats available to even have the resources you need to spend them as well. So it's kind of just like, once again, this is a problem that I do believe few people are having, right? And I would say the most annoyed part of the population from this will probably be very simple. I think it's new free-to-play players that are behind on their weekly bosses and would like to be able to build their characters faster. But the thing is, if you're a free-to-play player and you're not spending on any resources at all, no BP, none of that, then you wouldn't even have the mats like this required to even fully leverage those things, because you have so many other resources that you need to juggle as well. Think about tuners, all of that on top of it. So it's like, when you think about it, there's not really like a completely addressable part of the player base that has any need to really be upset over here. So when it comes to the monetization of this, I think we thought about it from every single way possible. I don't really think it's that big of a deal, ladies and gentlemen. And so I would just view this as paying for convenience, paying for time savings, and with it being literally the worst value package I've ever seen in the history of the game, yeah, I don't really think we can call this one pay to win. I don't really think that we can say that Kuro messed up. I think it's a scam pack made for those that are, you know, really okay with getting a horrible value, but still supporting the company and then saving some time for themselves in the process. And I think that's all it is. If there was a way to have, like, this is one of the actually better examples of whale monetization I've seen, because a lot of people hopefully can see how actually functionally useless it's going to be for most of the player base. So yeah, that will be that for that one, ladies and gentlemen. Let me know what you all thought about this breakdown, and of course, about the, well, I'm just going to be honest here. This patch looks a little sad. Let me know what you think about that as well. Peace out.